My name is John Egbert Shepherd. I'd like you to know a little bit about my life. It all started when I was born on July 13, 1878, in Benjamin, Utah. My father Aaron Adamson Shepherd was born in 1849, in Iowa. My mother Eliza and Job was born in 1851, in Fossey Broga Lampum St. Carms, South Wales. When they married in 1869, my mother was 1 year younger than my father. My mother, Eliza, passed away when I was almost 11 years old. Eliza undoubtedly was older than her years when she left this life, aging brought on by the hardships of living in a frontier area. After the stillborn birth of her 11th child, she never really recovered, and passed away about 7 months later. This surely was difficult on me as a young boy. Shortly after the passing of my mother, my father felt the need to take the family to the temple and be sealed. So in the summer following the death of Eliza, I accompanied my father to Manti, and as my grandmother stood proxy for my mother, the family was sealed for eternity in the temple by the priesthood of God. About a year and a half later, my father passed away apparently of an abdominal malignancy. This left us children as orphans, and my younger sister, Hannah, and I lived with our uncle, Isaac Garner Shepherd. I met the most beautiful gal named Louie Hone, would hop a boxcar and ride to Deseret, Utah to go visit Louie while we were courting. The Hones were beekeepers, and had holdings in Deseret and Benjamin. I married my sweetheart Louie Hone on September 28, 1898, at age 20 in Benjamin. That was a day to remember. She was born in 1877, in Benjamin. She was 21 years old when we married, 1 year older than me. In 1920 we went to the Salt Lake LDS Temple and were sealed for time and all eternity. We had 4 lovely children. All our children were born in Utah, just like me. After we were married I moved my family to Mapleton, Utah. Our eldest daughter Desta was born on the 15th of July in 1900. We then moved to Benjamin where we were to live the remainder of our lives. Our son John was born February 2, 1903. Our daughter Doris was born also in Benjamin August 6, in 1909. I was a large man about 6 feet 2 inches, and was built stout. Interestingly, my wife was a very small woman and petite. She was probably not 5 feet tall. I lived in Benjamin, Utah and Utah County, Utah. We bought approximately 35 acres of land adjacent to the highway that runs between Payson and Benjamin and lived in the home that Louie's father built. It was a typical farm, with chickens, a half-dozen milk cows, large garden, and plenty to do. We would sell for money some eggs, cream, and honey. It gave some spending money between crops. I made my life as a farmer. Of the 35 acres of land, about 20 of the acres were farmable. I would farm hay, grain, peas, sugar beets, and other crops. Louie and I had 21 wonderful grandchildren. From our daughter Desta, we had Afton, John, Joyce, Louis, Evelyn, Renee and Elaine. We had John, Ivan, Kenneth, Diane and Charles from our son John. We had Lawrence, Jimmy, Ned, Russell, Patsy, Robert, Betty, Doris and Douglas from our daughter Doris. I was an advisor to the Aaronic priesthood of the Benjamin ward at the age of 71. I was the superintendent of the Sunday school. These were the days when Sunday school was a separate meeting, and the superintendent coordinated a meeting where the sacrament was passed. I worked with one Boy Scout for 2 years before the boy finally got his beekeeping merit badge, and served as counselor to 2 bishops also in the Benjamin ward. My father had property on the shores of Utah Lake where they ran some sheep to provide a living for the family. Doubtless there were many fun times that this young boy would have on the shores of a lake, but also as likely, there were many chores for a young healthy lad to be involved with. I learned a good work ethic helping my father and brothers in the sheep business. After the death of my parents, while I was living with my uncle Isaac Garner Shepherd, As a youth, I would help in camp duties, probably more than tending sheep. When I would have meals ready, I would go call in those tending the sheep. On one such occasion, I came face to face with a bear on a mountain path. As I was walking, there was a curve in the path that blocked my sight of traffic coming toward me on the path. As I turned the corner, I stood eye to eye with the bear. The two of us stood looking at each other for what seemed like minutes, but realized that in actuality was a split second. I turned and ran back down the path I had been walking on. When asked about the bear, I never saw it again. I only assumed the bear was as frightened of me as I was of the bear, and it turned and ran the opposite way. My life was that of a very humble farmer. I was not blessed with much of the riches in life, and while I desired to be able to provide nice things for my family, I was content with my status in life and showed no bitterness in my poverty. Rather, I made my family my riches, and I treated each one like the most important commodity in my control. My grandchildren loved to be around me, and I always made them welcomed. I showed tremendous patience with the grandchildren, for while they would do things that would affect my farming, I never was angry with them. For example, the grandchildren would play house in the pea patch. They would tromp down the vines to make the outline of a home, with rooms within. Also, he had a series of ditches dug on the part of the property that was for the home. The ditches would serve to provide water for the berries and garden, as well as the lawn. The kids would make paths and bridges over the ditches and then roll wheels pretending they were motorcycles over the paths. This would cause damage to the ditches, but I never showed anger or displeasure over the destruction. While teaching one grandson to drive, the grandson drove my car off the road, through the bar pit, and back up on the road. I never said a word. I loved them so much. I was very proud of my grandsons that served missions for the church. One time when Ned Downey, a grandson, was injured in a mining accident, I became very emotional, and went to the hospital and gave him a blessing. The blessing was a significant event in the lives of my grandkids who witnessed it. Also another grandson, John Rex Shepherd had spinal meningitis and his mother, Aline, asked me to administer to her son. She asked me to give the blessing that he would die so he would not have to go through life maimed. I gave my grandson a blessing, but blessed him to live. Rex never had any ill effects of his illness. Towards the end of my farming career, I was harrowing and the harrow somehow flipped up and came down on my leg. I was never the same after that, and pretty well ended my farming career. About this same time, I suffered a heart attack. I was in bed for several years. On the 16th of November 1948, my wife and queen, Louie, passed away. I grieved the loss significantly. Later when a grandson was getting ready to go on his mission, I was asked to speak. I spoke and then told my grandson that something was wrong, that I could not see during the talk, but I kept on talking. I was taken home to rest and passed away that night, the 21st of January 1950. I was buried January 25, 1950 in the Payson Cemetery.